You cannot stop what is already in motion. The darkness will consume you all. The secret society was still active. Whitlock was known for his eccentric behavior and his collection of rare, ancient books on dark magic. After the intense battle with the dark forces at Evergreen Academy, Alina felt a weight lifting off her shoulders, but it was soon replaced by a new sense of uncertainty. The school had become a place filled with too many dark memories, and with her friends also transferring out, it felt like the right time for a change. Her parents decided to move her to another school, hoping that a fresh start would give her peace. Alina was nervous but hopeful. She missed her friends, but they all agreed that this was what they needed to move forward. The day before her first day at the new school, Alina received a message from Detective Marlo. His words were warm and caring, expressing how much he admired her strength through everything they had faced together. He hinted that he hoped their paths would cross again soon, and Alina couldn't help but smile at the thought. Alina's first day at Willowbrook High was a whirlwind of new faces and places. The school was much larger than Evergreen Academy, and she felt like a small fish in a big pond. But as the day went on, she started to find her rhythm. However, her sense of ease was shattered when she turned a corner and saw a familiar face she never wanted to see again. Layla. The sight of Layla's smug grin and her usual entourage of followers instantly brought back all the pain and humiliation Alina had endured. Layla wasted no time making her presence known. She sauntered up to Alina, flaunting her designer clothes and dropping hints about her father's wealth and influence. "Oh, look who it is," Layla sneered. "Didn't think you'd ever dare show your face after everything that happened. Too bad you're still just a poor little nobody." Alina felt her heart sink, but she forced herself to stay calm. She wasn't the same girl who had cowered before Layla at Evergreen. This time, things would be different. As the days passed, Layla continued her relentless bullying, using every opportunity to remind Alina of her place. She would spread rumors, leave cruel notes in Alina's locker, and make snide remarks in class. Alina tried to ignore it, focusing on her studies and trying to blend in with new friends, but Layla's words cut deep. At night, Alina would lie awake, torn between fear and anger. She wanted revenge, but she knew she had to be smart about it. She had learned from her experiences at Evergreen. Rushing into things could have dire consequences. Detective Marlo's messages became her only solace. He would check in on her regularly, offering words of encouragement and reminding her of her strength. He was the only one who knew the full extent of what she had gone through, and Alina found herself growing closer to him with each passing day. One evening, as Alina was studying in her room, her phone buzzed with a new message from Marlo. This time, it wasn't just a casual check-in. He asked her to meet him at a cafe near the school. His message was cryptic, but Alina agreed, curious to hear what he had to say. When they met, Marlo was unusually serious. He confessed that he had been thinking about her constantly, that he admired her bravery and resilience, and that he had developed feelings for her. Alina was taken aback, but felt a warmth spreading through her chest. She had felt something too, but she hadn't been sure if it was mutual. Marlo then leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Alina, I know you want to get back at Layla and her father for everything they've done to you, but you need to be careful. They're powerful people, and if you're not cautious, things could get dangerous." His words were a mix of concern and a veiled offer. Was he suggesting that he could help her? Alina wasn't sure, but she nodded, her mind racing with the possibilities. The next day, Alina decided to visit some old friends from Evergreen who had also transferred to different schools. She missed the bond they shared, and she needed their support now more than ever. They met at a local park, where they exchanged stories of their new schools. When Alina mentioned Layla's presence at Willowbrook, her friends were shocked. "You can't be serious," Mira said. "Of all the schools in the world, she ends up at yours?" Alina nodded, her expression grim. "It's like she's following me, trying to ruin my life all over again. But I'm not going to let her win this time." Her friends rallied around her, offering their help. Together, they began brainstorming ways to expose Layla and her father. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but with Detective Marlo's assistance, they had a fighting chance. With Marlo's guidance, Alina and her friends started gathering evidence against Layla's father, who was involved in shady business deals that could ruin his reputation if exposed. It was risky, but Alina knew it was the only way to protect herself and finally get revenge. They spent weeks meticulously planning, making sure every detail was perfect. Alina felt a mixture of excitement and dread. This was her chance to turn the tables, but it could also backfire horribly. Meanwhile, Marlo's feelings for Alina deepened, and he became even more protective of her. He knew they were walking a fine line, but he couldn't stand the thought of her being hurt again. He promised to stand by her no matter what happened. The day finally came when they were ready to put their plan into action. Alina felt a knot of anxiety in her stomach, but she pushed it aside. She had come too far to back down now. They arranged for a meeting with one of Layla's father's business associates, pretending to offer a deal that was too good to pass up. Alina and her friends had set up hidden cameras and microphones to capture everything. As the meeting began, Alina watched from a distance, her heart pounding. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, until Layla unexpectedly showed up. Alina hadn't anticipated this, and it threw the whole plan into jeopardy. Layla's father immediately grew suspicious, and Alina felt panic rising in her chest. If they were caught, the consequences could be dire. Just as things seemed about to fall apart, Detective Marlo appeared on the scene, stepping in to smooth things over. He had anticipated that something might go wrong, and had been monitoring the situation closely. With Marlo's help, they managed to keep the ruse going, and Layla's father ended up incriminating himself on tape. It was a narrow escape, but it worked. Alina finally had the evidence she needed to bring him down. Layla, however, was livid. She knew that Alina had something to do with this, and she wasn't going to let it slide. The war between them was far from over. The fallout from the operation was swift. Layla's father's reputation was shattered, and his business began to crumble under the weight of the scandal. Alina felt a sense of vindication, but it was bittersweet. She knew that she had crossed a line and that there would be consequences. Layla, driven by anger and a thirst for revenge, doubled down on her efforts to ruin Alina's life. She started spreading vicious rumors, turning Alina's new friends against her and making her feel more isolated than ever. Alina tried to stay strong, but the constant attacks were taking their toll. Even Marlo, who had been her rock, seemed distant lately, as if he was struggling with something he couldn't share. One evening, Marlo invited Alina out to dinner. She hoped it would be a chance for them to reconnect, but instead, he seemed preoccupied, distracted. After dinner, as they walked along a quiet street, he suddenly stopped and turned to her. "Alina," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I care about you more than you know, but I've been thinking, maybe it's best if we keep some distance for a while. This situation with Layla and the father is dangerous, and I don't want you to get hurt because of me." Alina felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under her. "What are you saying? You're breaking up with me?" Marlo shook his head. "No, it's not that. I just think you need to focus on yourself right now. You're strong, Alina. You don't need me to fight your battles for you." His words cut deep, but Alina knew he was right. She had to stand on her own, no matter how much she wanted to lean on him. Feeling more alone than ever, Alina began to unravel. The pressure was too much. Layla's bullying, the fallout from the operation, and now Marlo pulling away. She started to consider drastic measures, desperate to end the torment once and for all. One night, she found herself standing on the rooftop of a building, staring down at the city below. The thought of jumping flashed through her mind, but she shook it off, horrified by where her thoughts were leading her. Before she could do anything rash, her phone buzzed with a message from Marlo. "I know you're struggling, Alina. Please don't do anything you'll regret. I'm here for you, even if it doesn't seem like it." His words were enough to pull her back from the edge, but the darkness in her heart remained. The next day, Alina woke up with a renewed sense of determination. She realized that she couldn't let Layla win, and she couldn't rely on Marlo to save her. She had to take control of her own life and fight back on her own terms. She threw herself into her studies, using her schoolwork as a distraction from the chaos around her. She also started looking into ways to protect herself legally, exploring restraining orders and other measures to keep Layla at bay. But no matter how much progress she made, Layla always seemed one step ahead. Alina knew that the only way to end this once and for all was to face Layla head on. The day of reckoning came sooner than Alina expected. She was walking home from school when Layla and her cronies cornered her in an alley. There was no one around to help, and Alina knew she was in real danger. Layla smirked, her eyes cold. "You think you can just ruin my family and get away with it? You're nothing, Alina. You're weak, and you always will be." But this time, Alina didn't back down. She squared her shoulders and met Layla's gaze head on. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Layla. You can't control me." Confrontation quickly escalated, with Layla pushing Alina, trying to intimidate her. But Alina stood her ground, refusing to let fear dictate her actions any longer. Just as Layla was about to lash out, a voice echoed through the alley. Detective Marlo. Marlo had been keeping an eye on Alina from a distance, worried that Layla might try something. He stepped forward, his presence alone enough to make Layla hesitate. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Layla's bravado faltered, but she quickly masked it with a sneer. "This has nothing to do with you, Detective. Stay out of it." Marlo shook his head. "It has everything to do with me if someone's in danger. Leave Layla, now." Reluctantly, Layla backed off, but the look she gave Alina was filled with venom. "This isn't over," she hissed, before storming off with her friends. After the confrontation, Marlo and Alina sat down at a nearby cafe. Marlo could see the exhaustion in Alina's eyes, the weight of everything she had been through. He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "You did the right thing standing up to her, Alina. But you don't have to do this alone." Alina felt a surge of warmth at his touch, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel so alone. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't shown up," she admitted, her voice shaky. "You're stronger than you think," Marlo said gently. "But we need to be smart about this. Layla's not going to stop, and we need to make sure she can't hurt you again." They discussed a plan to gather more evidence against Layla and her father, this time with the goal of ensuring that Layla would face consequences for her actions. Marlo promised to be by her side every step of the way, and Alina couldn't help but feel her heart swell with something more than gratitude. Back at school, Alina found herself unexpectedly approached by some of the students who had once been close to Layla. They were tired of her bullying and had seen firsthand the destruction she caused. They offered to help Alina, providing her with information and support. With this new alliance, Alina felt more confident in her fight against Layla. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she had people she could trust, people who believed in her. Meanwhile, her relationship with Marlo deepened. He became her confidant, her protector, and as they spent more time together, the lines between friendship and something more began to blur. Alina found herself falling for him, despite the chaos in her life. One evening, after a particularly tense day, Marlo invited Alina out for dinner. She could sense that something was different about him. He seemed nervous, almost hesitant. Over the course of the meal, they talked about everything but the tension between them, until finally, Marlo took a deep breath and looked her in the eyes. "Alina, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice soft. "I've been trying to fight it, to stay professional, but I can't anymore. I care about you more than I should." Alina's heart raced, a mixture of fear and excitement. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marlo reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I'm saying that I'm falling in love with you, Alina. And I know it's complicated, but I can't keep pretending that I don't feel this way." For a moment, Alina was speechless. She had felt the same way for weeks, but hearing him say it out loud made it real. "I've been falling for you too," she admitted, her cheeks flushing with emotion. They shared a tender moment, but both knew that their situation was far from simple. Marlo was still investigating Layla's father, and Alina was still in danger. But for the first time in a long time, they had something to hold on to, a hope for the future. With their newfound relationship, Alina and Marlo grew closer, but the threats from Layla loomed larger than ever. They continued gathering evidence, working together to ensure that Layla's reign of terror would come to an end. But as they dug deeper, they uncovered something even more sinister, evidence that Layla's father was involved in criminal activities far beyond what they had initially suspected. It was a dangerous discovery, one that put them both at risk. Despite the danger, Alina and Marlo pressed on, knowing that they had to see this through. But as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, they realized that they were running out of time. The final showdown was set in motion. With the evidence they had gathered, Alina and Marlo orchestrated a plan to expose Layla's father once and for all. They knew it would be dangerous, but they had no other choice. The plan was risky, involving a sting operation that would catch Layla's father in the act of committing a crime. Marlo pulled in favors from trusted colleagues, ensuring that everything was in place. As the day of the operation approached, the tension between Alina and Marlo grew. They knew that this could be their last chance to bring Layla and her father down. But the stakes had never been higher. The operation started smoothly, but as they moved in to make the arrest, everything went wrong. Layla's father had been tipped off, and he managed to escape just before they arrived. In the chaos that followed, Layla confronted Alina, furious and desperate. "You've ruined everything," Layla screamed, her eyes wild with rage. "My father will never forgive you for this." Alina stood her ground, even as fear gripped her. "This ends now, Layla. You can't keep getting away with this." But before Layla could respond, the sound of sirens filled the air, and police officers swarmed the area. Marlo rushed to Alina's side, pulling her into his arms as Layla was taken into custody. It was over, or so they thought. With Layla and her father in custody, Alina thought she could finally breathe easy. But the damage had been done. The media frenzy surrounding the case had put Alina in the spotlight, and she struggled to cope with the attention. Marlo stayed by her side, offering comfort and support. But he knew that the real challenge was just beginning. Layla's father was a powerful man, and there was no guarantee that he would stay behind bars for long. As they navigated the fallout, Alina and Marlo found solace in each other. Their relationship deepened, but the shadow of what they had been through hung over them. They knew that they had to stay vigilant, that the danger wasn't truly over. Just when Alina thought things were finally settling down, a new threat emerged. A series of anonymous messages began arriving on her phone, each one more sinister than the last. They were vague, but the intent was clear. Someone was watching her, and they wanted revenge. Marlo was immediately concerned. He had a feeling that Layla's father was behind it, even from prison, but there was no concrete proof. They couldn't ignore the threat, but they also couldn't live in fear. Determined to protect Alina, Marlo began investigating the source of the messages. He worked day and night, refusing to rest until he knew who was behind them. As Marlo dug deeper, he uncovered something that sent chills down his spine. The messages weren't just coming from one person. They were part of a larger network, one that had ties to Layla's father and his criminal empire. The story is far from over. The suspense builds, the danger escalates, and the mystery deepens. Subscribe now. Alina's anxiety escalates as the threatening messages become more frequent, each one more ominous than the last. Marlo, concerned for her safety, insists on staying close to her at all times, knowing they're dealing with something far more dangerous than before. The realization that they're up against an organized network forces them to reconsider their approach, knowing a single misstep could cost them everything. Determined to uncover the truth, Marlo reaches out to trusted contacts within law enforcement, hoping to gain insight into the criminal network tied to Layla's father. Meanwhile, Alina struggles with the constant fear that has begun to permeate her daily life. Despite Marlo's reassurances, she can't shake the feeling that they're being watched, and the strain starts to take a toll on her mental health. While investigating, Marlo is approached by an unexpected ally, an ex-associate of Layla's father who has grown disillusioned with the criminal empire. The man offers crucial information in exchange for protection, revealing the depth and reach of the network they're up against. Marlo, though wary, sees this as the break they need and agrees to the deal. Alina, on the other hand, is hesitant to trust the new informant, sensing ulterior motives behind his sudden desire to help. Despite her reservations, she supports Marlo's decision, knowing they have little choice if they want to dismantle the organization. As they dig deeper, the pieces of the puzzle begin to fall into place, but the danger surrounding them grows more palpable. With the new information in hand, Marlo and Alina plan a covert operation to disrupt one of the criminal network's major operations. They know this first strike will send a clear message to Layla's father that they are coming for him. The operation goes smoothly, but the success is short-lived as they soon realize they've only scratched the surface. The network retaliates quickly and viciously, targeting Marlo's closest allies and sending a clear warning to back off. Alina is horrified by the escalating violence and begins to question whether they are truly prepared for the battle ahead. The realization that they're dealing with an enemy who will stop at nothing to protect their empire sends a shiver down her spine. The fallout from the network's retaliation causes a rift between Alina and Marlo. Marlo blames himself for underestimating the enemy, while Alina struggles with feelings of guilt, wondering if her involvement has put everyone in danger. Tension grows as they argue over the best course of action, each weighed down by the fear of losing the other. Despite the growing tension, Marlo refuses to back down, doubling his efforts to bring the network to justice. Alina, feeling isolated and overwhelmed, decides to take matters into her own hands, secretly following a lead without Marlo's knowledge. Her decision sets off a chain of events that will have far-reaching consequences. Alina's solo investigation leads her to an abandoned warehouse where she uncovers a disturbing connection between Layla's father and a prominent political figure. She realizes the network's influence extends far beyond what they had imagined, and the stakes are even higher than they thought. Her discovery puts her directly in the crosshairs of the network, and she narrowly escapes an ambush. When Marlo learns of Alina's dangerous encounter, he is both furious and terrified. The near-miss forces them to confront the reality of the situation. They're not just up against a criminal organization, but a deeply entrenched system of corruption. Marlo vows to protect Alina at all costs, but they both know the road ahead will be perilous. In the midst of the chaos, Marlo and Alina steal a moment of peace, retreating to a secluded cabin outside the city. Away from the prying eyes of the network, they take time to reconnect and reflect on everything they've been through. The bond between them deepens as they open up about their fears, hopes, and the toll the battle has taken on them. During their time at the cabin, Marlo confesses the depth of his feelings for Alina, admitting that he can't imagine his life without her. Alina, touched by his vulnerability, reassures him that they are in this together. The respite is short-lived, but it gives them the strength they need to continue the fight. Returning to the city, Alina and Marlo find that the network has intensified its efforts to eliminate them. They face constant surveillance, and their every move is monitored. Alina struggles with the suffocating pressure, but Marlo's unwavering support keeps her grounded. Together, they devise a plan to outmaneuver the network. Using their own tactics against them, the plan involves planting false information to lure the network into a trap. It's a risky move, but they're running out of options. As they put the plan into action, the tension mounts, and Alina realizes just how much she has come to rely on Marlo. The success of their mission hinges on trust, and they both know that a single mistake could be fatal. Just as they're about to spring their trap, Alina and Marlo are blindsided by a betrayal from within their ranks. One of Marlo's trusted allies, coerced by the network, turns against them, revealing their plan. The betrayal shakes them to their core, forcing them to abandon the operation and retreat. Devastated by the betrayal, Marlo begins to question everything, wondering if they've been outmatched from the start. Alina, though equally shaken, refuses to give up. She reminds Marlo of how far they've come and convinces him that they can still win if they adapt to the changing situation. Together, they regroup and prepare for the final confrontation. Determined to bring down the network once and for all, Alina and Marlo devise a new, even riskier plan. This time, they intend to go after the network's financial infrastructure, crippling its operations and leaving Layla's father with no resources to fight back. They gather every ounce of courage and cunning they have, knowing this is their last chance. As they move forward with the plan, the tension between them dissipates, replaced by a sense of unity and purpose. Alina and Marlo know that this final push will determine their future. Either they will emerge victorious, or they will be consumed by the darkness they've been fighting against. The final showdown takes place in a high-security bank where the network's funds are stored. Alina and Marlo, along with a small team of trusted allies, infiltrate the bank under the cover of night. The operation is fraught with danger, and they face resistance at every turn. But they press on, knowing that failure is not an option. As they reach the vault, they encounter Layla's father, who has been tipped off about their plan. A tense standoff ensues, with Alina and Marlo confronting the man who has caused them so much pain. In a climactic moment, they manage to outmaneuver him, seizing control of the vault and transferring the funds to a secure location, effectively dismantling the network's power. With the network's financial backbone destroyed, Layla's father is finally apprehended, and the criminal empire begins to crumble. Alina and Marlo, though victorious, are left to deal with the emotional and psychological aftermath of the battle. The reality of what they've done, and the lives they've upended, begins to sink in. As they process everything, Marlo reassures Alina that they did what they had to do, and that they can now start to rebuild their lives. Alina, though still haunted by the events, feels a sense of closure for the first time in a long time. The chapter ends with the two of them reflecting on their journey, grateful to have made it through together. With the threat of the network finally behind them, Alina and Marlo start to rebuild their lives. They focus on healing, both individually and as a couple, and begin making plans for the future. The weight of the past still lingers, but they are determined to move forward together. As they settle into a new routine, Alina returns to school, intent on finishing her education and reclaiming the normalcy that was stolen from her. Marlo too starts to find peace in his work, knowing that he's made a difference. They both realize that the love they share is stronger than any challenge they have faced, and they look forward to the future with hope. Alina and Marlo are surprised by an unexpected visitor, Layla. After her father's arrest, she has been struggling to come to terms with the truth about his criminal empire. Seeking closure, she reaches out to Alina and Marlo, hoping to understand how everything fell apart. The encounter is tense, but it provides an opportunity for healing and closure. Despite their complicated history, Alina finds herself empathizing with Layla's situation. She realizes that Layla too has been a victim in her own way, manipulated by her father's power and influence. The meeting ends on a hopeful note, with Layla vowing to start a new life away from her father's shadow, and Alina offering her support. As life slowly returns to normal, Alina decides to return to Evergreen Academy to finish her final year. The school, once a place of darkness and fear, now feels like a place where she can regain control of her life. Marlo supports her decision, knowing how important it is for her to reclaim her sense of self. On her first day back, Alina is greeted with a mix of curiosity and respect from her classmates. The rumors surrounding her disappearance and the events that followed have made her somewhat of a legend. Determined to focus on her studies and move past the drama, Alina sets her sights on graduation, knowing that her future is finally within reach. The day of graduation arrives, marking a significant milestone in Alina's journey. As she stands on the stage, receiving her diploma, she reflects on everything she's been through: the fear, the danger, the pain, and the growth. Marlo watches from the audience, proud of how far she's come. The ceremony is filled with joy and relief, a stark contrast to the turmoil that once engulfed Alina's life. Surrounded by friends and loved ones, she feels a sense of accomplishment and hope for the future. As she throws her cap into the air, she knows that this is just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with endless possibilities. With graduation behind her, Alina begins to explore her options for the future. She considers going to college, but the events of the past year have also sparked an interest in criminal justice. Inspired by Marlo's work, she starts to think about pursuing a career in law enforcement, hoping to make a difference in the world. Marlo, meanwhile, continues his work as a detective, but with a renewed sense of purpose. The experience of taking down Layla's father's network has reignited his passion for justice, and he is more determined than ever to protect the innocent. Alina's interest in his work brings them even closer, as they discuss the possibility of working together one day. Just as Alina and Marlo begin to settle into their new lives, a new challenge arises. A former associate of Layla's father resurfaces, seeking revenge for the downfall of the criminal empire. The threat is more personal this time, targeting Alina and Marlo directly. The couple must once again join forces to protect themselves and those they love. The confrontation is intense, testing the strength of their bond and their resolve. However, with the experience and wisdom they've gained, they manage to outmaneuver their enemy, bringing an end to the threat once and for all. The victory is bittersweet, but it solidifies their commitment to each other and their shared future. With the final threat behind them, Alina and Marlo make a promise to each other to always stand by one another, no matter what challenges come their way. They know that their journey hasn't been easy, but they also know that they are stronger together. The chapter ends with them looking forward to a future filled with love, hope, and the promise of new adventures. As they walk hand in hand into the sunset, they both feel a sense of peace and fulfillment, knowing that they have overcome the darkness and found the light on the other side. Their story may have been filled with danger and uncertainty, but it has also been a story of love, resilience, and triumph.
Subscribe for more exciting African folktales, and thanks for watching Bye, my beautiful family.